She was Hollywood's original blonde bombshell, the woman every man desired and every woman envied. But behind the glittering lights and flawless smile, Jean Harlow's life was unraveling. From a husband's mysterious death to her own sudden and shocking end at just 26, the question remains, was she a victim of fate or something far more sinister? Jean Harlow, the original blonde bombshell, was more than just a star. She was an icon, a shimmering embodiment of Hollywood's golden age, and a mystery that has fascinated generations. Her story is one of meteoric rise, glittering fame, scandal, heartbreak, and an untimely death that has fueled decades of speculation. To understand the mystery of Jean Harlow, you have to start at the very beginning, before the fame, before the lights. When she was just a girl named Harlean Carpenter. From Kansas City, Harlean Harlow Carpenter was born on March 3, 1911 in Kansas City, Missouri. Her childhood was complicated. Her mother, known as Mama Zhang, had her own dreams of being a star, dreams she never achieved. She projected those ambitions onto her daughter, creating a relationship that would define Jean's life. From the start, Harlean was adored for her beauty, but she was shy, quiet, and had little interest in fame. She married young, just 16, to Charles McGrew, a wealthy young man, and moved to Los Angeles. She had no intention of becoming a movie star, but fate had other plans. It started innocently enough. While accompanying a friend to a film studio, someone noticed her striking beauty. Offers began coming in, and soon Harlean was appearing as an extra in films. She adopted her mother's maiden name, Harlow, and gradually built her way into Hollywood's inner circle. By 1930, she caught the attention of Howard Hughes, who cast her in Hell's Angels. With that role, Jean Harlow was born. VA platinum-haired goddess with a sultry screen presence unlike anything audiences had seen. She became an overnight sensation, the woman who embodied sex appeal during the Great Depression, offering audiences an escape from their grim realities. But behind the glittering image was a young woman who never quite felt comfortable in the spotlight. She preferred quiet nights with close friends over the wild Hollywood parties she was often photographed attending. Despite her fame, she struggled with insecurity, a domineering mother, and relationships that often turned toxic. One of those relationships would lead to one of the first great mysteries of her life, the death of her second husband, Paul Byrne. Paul Byrne was a respected producer at MGM, and in 1932, Jean married him. The marriage seemed stable, if somewhat unconventional. But just 2 months after the wedding, tragedy struck. Byrne was found dead in their home, a gunshot wound to the head. By his side was a strange note addressed to Jean. M quickly declared it a suicide, citing Byrne's alleged impotence and depression. But the whispers started almost immediately. Some claimed Byrne had been murdered, either by a jealous lover or by someone trying to protect Jean's reputation. Others believed MGM orchestrated a cover-up to shield their rising star from scandal. The truth of that night has never been fully uncovered, and the details remain murky to this day. Despite the shadow of Byrne's death, Jean's career continued to soar. She starred in hit after hit, Red Dust, Dinner at 8, and Bombshell. She became the highest-paid actress at MGM and a beloved figure to millions of fans. On screen, she was brash, witty, and confident. Off-screen, she was warm, shy, and deeply generous, often helping friends and even strangers in need. But the demands of her career and her personal struggles were beginning to take their toll. She dealt with exhaustion, illnesses, and a controlling mother who dictated much of her personal life. By 1937, Jean was engaged to actor William Powell, one of the few men who seemed to truly understand her. She was just 26, and despite the turbulence in her life, she was looking forward to a future that finally seemed happy. But in May of that year, while filming the movie Saratoga, Jean became ill. At first, the studio thought it was the flu or exhaustion. She had complained of feeling weak, of having difficulty walking, and of pain in her abdomen. Within days, her condition worsened dramatically. She was rushed to the hospital, where doctors diagnosed her with uremic poisoning, a complication from kidney failure. In an era before dialysis and advanced medical treatments, the condition was a death sentence. On June 7, 1937, Jean Harlow died. She was only 26 years old. Hollywood was stunned. Her fans were devastated. How could someone so young, so vibrant, be gone so suddenly? The studio announced her death was due to natural causes, but as with Paul Byrne's death, rumors spread. Some claimed she had been poisoned. Others whispered that she had been pregnant and that a botched procedure had led to her death. There were even those who believed her mother's refusal to allow certain medical treatments had cost Jean her life. The official explanation, kidney failure, never fully silenced the questions. Her funeral was attended by thousands, with crowds lining the streets. MGM handled the arrangements, presenting a polished, glamorous farewell to their biggest star. But those who knew Jean privately grieved a young woman who had been far more than her image, a loyal friend, a kind soul, and someone who had never truly found peace in the world that adored her. The mysteries surrounding Jean Harlow have endured for nearly a century. Why did Paul Byrne really die that night? Was it truly suicide or something more sinister? What role, if any, did MGM play in shaping the narrative? And what about Jean's own death? Could it have been prevented? Was it simply the tragic reality of medical limitations in the 1930s, or was there more to the story? Some conspiracy theorists even suggest that Jean's platinum hair dyed containing toxic chemicals at the time had contributed to her kidney failure. Others point to untreated scarlet fever from childhood, which may have silently damaged her kidneys over time. Jean Harlow's legacy remains complicated. She was a groundbreaking star, redefining what it meant to be a sex symbol, paving the way for actresses like Marilyn Monroe decades later. But she was also a young woman trapped in an industry that prized image over humanity, an industry that worked her to exhaustion and controlled nearly every aspect of her life. In the decades since her death, books, documentaries, and even films have tried to piece together her story, but the truth remains elusive. What we know for certain is that Jean Harlow left an indelible mark on Hollywood. Her films are still watched, her style still copied, her image still iconic. And yet, beneath the legend is the mystery of a woman whose life ended far too soon, raising questions that may never be fully answered. Was she the victim of her own fame, of an industry that chewed up and discarded its brightest stars? Or was she simply a young woman whose health failed her in a time when medicine couldn't keep up? Even now, when you look at her photograph shows wide, knowing eyes, that platinum hair, that perfect smile, you can't help but wonder what really happened. And maybe that's part of her enduring allure. Jean Harlow remains, to this day, Hollywood's eternal mystery, a star whose light burned too bright, too fast, and left behind a shadow that still lingers. Jean Harlow's story doesn't begin in Hollywood. It begins in the quiet neighborhoods of Kansas City, where a little girl named Harlean Carpenter grew up in a strict but complicated household. Her father, Montclair Carpenter, was a successful dentist. Her mother, Jean-Paul Harlow Carpenter, known as Mama Jean, dreamed of wealth, glamour, and a life beyond the confines of the Midwest. From a young age, Mama Jean was obsessed with making her daughter perfect, not just in looks, but in manners and social standing. Harlean adored her mother and would do anything to make her happy, even as she grew into a shy, reserved girl who preferred the company of a few close friends. It was Mama Jean's ambition that would ultimately propel Harlean into the world of Hollywood, whether she wanted it or not. By 1927, Harlean was just 16 and desperate to escape her mother's suffocating control. She found a way out by marrying Charles Chuck McGrew, a wealthy young man. The marriage was quick, and for a time, Harlean thought she had found stability. The couple moved to Beverly Hills, where they lived a life of quiet luxury. But the marriage soon fell apart. Chuck drank heavily, and Harlean, still practically a child, felt trapped and unhappy. It was during this time that fate intervened. One afternoon, while dropping off a friend at a movie studio, someone noticed Harlean's striking beauty and suggested she try acting. She laughed it off at first as she had no interest in the film industry, but soon, casting directors began calling. With her mother's encouragement, Harleen reluctantly took on extra work in films. Harleen Carpenter became Jean Harlow, taking her mother's maiden name as her stage identity. With her natural beauty, charisma, and unique voice, she quickly stood out. Hollywood was looking for a new type of star, someone who could embody sensuality and danger, but still feel relatable to audiences. Her breakout came with Howard Hughes' aviation epic Hell's Angels, 1930. Hughes spared no expense promoting her as the ultimate fantasy woman, and audiences were captivated by her platinum blonde hair, playful grin, and sultry screen presence. Overnight, Jean Harlow was a star. She wasn't just an actress, she was an image, a brand, and a cultural phenomenon. The 1930s were the height of the Depression, and people needed escapism. Jean Harlow delivered. She starred in hit after hit: Red-Headed Woman, Red Dust, Dinner at 8, and Bombshell. She wasn't just playing characters. She was shaping a new archetype, the wisecracking, independent woman who could go toe-to-toe with men, but with fame came scrutiny. The process of maintaining her signature platinum hair was grueling and dangerous. The bleach and ammonia mixture she used multiple times a week burned her scalp and destroyed her natural hair. Some biographers have even speculated that years of chemical exposure may have contributed to her health decline. One of the darkest chapters of Jean Harlow's life was her marriage to Paul Byrne, an MGM producer. On paper, it was a good match. Byrne was intelligent, respected, and deeply connected in the industry. But behind closed doors, the marriage was troubled. Rumors swirled about Byrne's inability to consummate the marriage, about his temper, and about his ongoing relationship with a woman named Dorothy Millett. Then, just 2 months after the wedding, Paul Byrne was found dead in their home with a gunshot wound to the head. Beside him was a note addressed to Jean. MGM moved swiftly, declaring, "It is suicide," and crafting a narrative that painted Byrne as a man tortured by physical inadequacies. But many in Hollywood whispered about a cover-up. Some believed that Dorothy Millett, reportedly unstable and jealous, had confronted Byrne and killed him before taking her own life days later. Others believed MGM executives staged the scene to protect their star. To this day, the truth remains one of Hollywood's great unsolved mysteries. Jean Harlow hated the constant attention, the gossip, and the relentless pace of studio life. Friends described her as sweet, humble, and far more interested in quiet evenings at home than the wild parties she was rumored to attend. She loved simple pleasures: cooking, playing cards, and spending time with her dogs, but the pressures of fame and her controlling mother weighed heavily on her. Mama Jean dictated everything from her finances to her relationships, often clashing with the men Jean loved. Despite her fame and fortune, Jean never truly had control over her own life. By the mid-1930s, Jean found happiness with actor William Powell, known for his sophisticated roles in films like The Thin Man. Powell was older, refined, and seemed to offer Jean the stability she craved. They became engaged, and for the first time, Jean talked openly about wanting a future away from the chaos of Hollywood. Friends noted that Powell brought out the best in her. She laughed more, worried less, and seemed genuinely hopeful about life beyond the screen. But fate had other plans. In 1937, while filming Saratoga with Clark Gable, Jean began to feel unwell. At first, it seemed like the flu, fatigue, nausea, and headaches, but her condition deteriorated rapidly. She collapsed on set and was rushed to the hospital, where doctors diagnosed her with uremia caused by kidney failure. Medical technology at the time offered few options. Dialysis didn't exist, and antibiotics were still experimental. Some accounts claim that her mother, guided by strict Christian Science beliefs, delayed or refused certain treatments. Others point to untreated complications from scarlet fever she'd had as a child, which may have silently damaged her kidneys. On June 7, 1937, Jean Harlow died at just 26 years old. The news sent shockwaves through Hollywood and beyond. Fans gathered outside the hospital, sobbing, unable to believe that the vibrant, glamorous star they adored was gone. Quickly moved to manage the narrative, presenting her death as a tragic but natural occurrence, but rumors swirled. Some claimed she had been poisoned. Others whispered about a botched medical procedure. There were even conspiracy theories that linked her death to the toxic hair treatments she endured for years. Her funeral was a spectacle. Thousands lined the streets to watch the procession, and Hollywood's biggest names attended the service. William Powell was inconsolable. Mama Zhang, ever the stage mother, reportedly used the occasion to further solidify her daughter's legend, ensuring that the platinum blonde would never be forgotten. Harley Carpenter's childhood wasn't filled with the glamour or chaos of Hollywood. It was quiet, structured, and tightly controlled by her mother. Mama Zhang was a woman consumed by unfulfilled ambition. She had once dreamed of becoming a star herself, but never got her chance. When Harley was born, Mama Zhang poured all her unachieved dreams into her daughter. Harley was bright, observant, and unusually beautiful even as a child. Teachers and neighbors often remarked on her striking green eyes and golden curls. But beneath that charm was a girl who longed for freedom. Her father, Montclair Carpenter, was a steady influence, but his relationship with Mama Zhang deteriorated as her obsession with social climbing grew. By the time Harley was a teenager, her parents' marriage had fallen apart, leaving her emotionally tethered almost exclusively to her mother. This bond with Mama Zhang would shape Harley's entire life, sometimes as a source of comfort, other times as a trap she could never escape. When Harley moved to Los Angeles with her first husband, she had no dreams of fame. But Hollywood, even in the late 1920s, was a city that could smell beauty a mile away. That one chance encounter at a film studio led to small parts, then featured roles, and finally her big break in Howard Hughes' Hell's Angels. Hughes saw in her what no one else had, the potential for a completely new kind of sex symbol. He ordered her to bleach her hair into an almost white shade, creating the platinum blonde look that would become her trademark. The process was grueling, a mixture of ammonia, bleach, and Lux soap that burned her scalp and left her hair brittle. She hated it but complied, understanding that Hollywood demanded sacrifice. The gamble paid off. The audience were mesmerized. Suddenly, Jean Harlow wasn't just another actress, she was the actress, a cultural icon. Women rushed to copy her hairstyle. Men fantasized about her, and studios clamored to cast her in films. But privately, she never adjusted to the attention. Fame felt like a cage, and with every new success, the bars of that cage closed tighter around her. Hollywood in the 1930s was a glittering illusion. Studios like MGM carefully crafted every narrative around their stars, who they dated, what they wore, or even what they ate. Zhang, despite her natural warmth and humor, was no exception. The scandal surrounding Paul Bern's death was the studio's greatest test. Publicly, MGM pushed the suicide story, but internally, chaos reigned. Police reports, conflicting witness statements, and rumors of a violent altercation the night of his death all pointed to something far more complicated. Some insiders whispered that Bern had been killed during a confrontation with Dorothy Millett, his long-term partner who felt betrayed by his marriage to Zhang. Others believed the studio itself staged the scene, planting the suicide note to protect their star and their investment in her future films. What's chilling is how quickly the studio moved to erase the story. Reporters were silenced, evidence disappeared, and within weeks, the narrative was fixed. Paul Bern, a tortured soul, had taken his own life. Jean Harlow was the grieving widow, ready to return to work. Off-screen, Jean Harlow was nothing like her sultry on-screen persona. Friends described her as sweet, playful, and even shy. She loved cooking for friends, playing board games, and doting on her beloved dogs. She enjoyed quiet evenings far more than the Hollywood nightlife she was so often associated with, but her personal life was rarely peaceful. Mama Zhang exerted a level of control that bordered on suffocating. She managed Jean's finances, approved or disapproved of her relationships, and even controlled her medical care. Zhang longed for independence, but couldn't bear the thought of breaking her mother's heart, a dynamic that would haunt her until the end of her life. In actor William Powell, Zhang found something rare, genuine companionship. Powell admired her not just as a star, but as a funny, intelligent, and endlessly kind woman. He respected her in a way few others had. Their relationship was one of quiet affection, the kind of stability Zhang had always craved. Friends often recalled how happy she seemed during this time. She spoke about marriage, about leaving the industry, about starting a new life. For once, it seemed, Jean Harlow might have found her way out of the machine that had consumed her youth. When Zhang fell ill during the filming of Saratoga in 1937, the studio initially downplayed her condition. But her symptoms of swelling, fatigue, and difficulty breathing pointed to something serious. By the time she was hospitalized, her kidneys were failing. Modern medical experts believe her death was the result of chronic kidney disease, likely caused by the untreated scarlet fever she'd suffered as a child. But the rumors never stopped. Some insisted the years of toxic hair treatments had slowly poisoned her. Others blamed Mama Zhang, claiming her refusal to allow aggressive medical intervention sealed her daughter's fate. There were even whispers of darker causes, secret pregnancies, botched procedures, or studio interference to keep damaging truths hidden. None of these theories have ever been substantiated, but they persist. A testament to the aura of mystery that surrounded Zhang in life and death, Jean Harlow's influence on Hollywood can't be overstated. She was the blueprint for the blonde bombshell archetype that would later be perfected by Marilyn Monroe, Jane Mansfield, and countless others. But unlike many who followed, Zhang brought something unique to her roles, a wit and intelligence that made her characters multidimensional. Her films still captivate audiences today, not just because of her beauty, but because of the humanity she brought to every performance. She was magnetic, vulnerable, and endlessly fascinating on and off the screen. Perhaps the greatest tragedy of Zhang Harlow's story is how little control she had over her own narrative. In life, the studio dictated her image. In death, they controlled the story of her passing. What remains is a patchwork of truth and legend, a puzzle that fans and historians have been trying to piece together for nearly a century. Behind the platinum hair and the megawatt smile was a woman who craved normalcy, a home, a family, a quiet life. She never got the chance. And maybe that's why her story continues to resonate. Jean Harlow wasn't just a star. She was a symbol of everything dazzling and dangerous about Hollywood, the promise of immortality and the cost of achieving it. Harlean Harlow Carpenter was not born into fame. She was born into a middle-class family in Kansas City, Missouri, on March 3, 1911. Her father, Montclair Carpenter, was a dentist. Her mother, Jean Harlow, was a woman with dreams far bigger than the quiet life they lived. Mama Zhang, as she came to be known, wanted stardom, but never achieved it. When Harlean was born, Mama Zhang saw her daughter as her second chance. Growing up, Harlean was shy, but striking. She loved reading, had a sharp wit, and showed no interest in acting. Those who knew her as a child remembered her as sweet and obedient, but restless, often daydreaming about what life could be like beyond the confines of her small town. She married at just 16 to Charles McGrew, a wealthy young man, and followed him to Los Angeles. She didn't arrive in Hollywood to chase fame, she simply wanted a new life. But Hollywood had other plans. Harlean's path to stardom wasn't one of ambition, it was an accident. One day, while giving a friend a ride to a studio, someone noticed her striking looks and asked her to appear in a small part. From that moment, she was drawn into the machine of Hollywood. She adopted her mother's maiden name, Harlow, and became Jean Harlow, a name that would one day echo through history. Her big break came in 1930 when Howard Hughes cast her in Hell's Angels. The film was a sensation, and Jean's platinum hair and magnetic presence made her unforgettable. Almost overnight, she became Hollywood's new obsession. But behind the glamorous image, Zhang felt out of place. She wasn't a party girl. She didn't crave the spotlight. Fame, to her, was a job one she did well, but one that made her feel more isolated than adored. With fame came intense pressure. MGM, which eventually signed her, controlled every aspect of her life. They dictated what she wore, where she appeared, even who she was seen with. Zhang complied, but it weighed on her. she worked tirelessly, often filming multiple movies a year. Her hair was bleached to maintain her iconic platinum look, using harsh chemicals that left her scalp raw. She smiled for the cameras, delivered performances that captivated audiences and built a public image as the blonde bombshell. But off-screen, she was often exhausted and lonely. One of the darkest chapters of Jean Harlow's life came with her marriage to Paul Byrne, a respected producer. Their marriage, just 2 months old, ended in tragedy when Byrne was found dead in their home in 1932. He had been shot, and a cryptic note was found near his body. The studio quickly labeled it a suicide, claiming Byrne had been despondent over health issues, but rumors spread like wildfire. Some believed Byrne had been murdered by an ex-lover, Dorothy Millett, who later vanished and was found drowned. Others whispered that MGM orchestrated a cover-up to protect Zhang and their investment. In her career, Zhang never publicly spoke about what happened that night. She buried her grief, returned to work, and threw herself into her films. But those close to her said the tragedy haunted her. While the public saw Zhang as a glamorous star, her private life was much simpler. She loved quiet nights at home, cooking for friends, playing cards, and doting on her dogs. She was known for her generosity, often lending money to friends or helping those in need without hesitation, but her personal relationships were complicated. Her mother, Mama Zhang, controlled much of her life, including her finances. Zhang longed for independence, but struggled to break free from her mother's influence. She also endured failed relationships with men who were drawn to her fame, but not her true self. In actor William Powell, Zhang seemed to find something real. He admired her not just for her beauty, but for her humor, intelligence, and kindness. Their relationship was a source of happiness and stability in her otherwise turbulent life. Friends said she talked about marrying him, about stepping away from Hollywood to build a quieter life. For once, Zhang seemed to glimpse a future beyond the cameras. In 1937, while filming Saratoga, Zhang fell ill. At first, it seemed like the flu. She kept working, trying to push through the fatigue and pain. But her condition worsened rapidly. She developed swelling, difficulty breathing, and unbearable weakness. By the time she was taken to the hospital, it was too late. Doctors diagnosed her with kidney failure, likely the result of untreated scarlet fever from childhood. On June 7, 1937, Jean Harlow died. She was only 26 years old. Hollywood was stunned. Fans were heartbroken. Thousands lined the streets for her funeral, desperate to say goodbye to the woman who had captivated them. MGM spun the story, presenting her as a star who died too soon but lived a perfect, glamorous life, but the questions never stopped. Could her death have been prevented? Did her grueling work schedule, harsh beauty treatments, or even decisions made by her mother contribute to her rapid decline? To this day, those questions remain unanswered. Jean Harlow's influence on Hollywood is immeasurable. She created a new archetype, the witty, alluring, yet approachable blonde bombshell. Stars like Marilyn Monroe, Jane Mansfield, and Madonna would later draw inspiration from her. Her films, from Red Dust to Dinner at 8 to Bombshell, still captivate audiences. But more than her roles, it's her mystery that keeps her alive in the public imagination. Zhang was more than an actress. She was a paradox, a woman who never wanted fame but became one of the most famous women in the world, a woman adored by millions but controlled by the people closest to her, a woman who dreamed of a quiet life but died under the blinding lights of Hollywood. Perhaps that's why her story still resonates nearly a century later. It's a cautionary tale about the cost of fame, the fragility of life, and the way legends are born not just from success but from tragedy. When we look at her photographs today, her smile seems to hold secrets we'll never uncover. Maybe that's what makes Jean Harlow eternal, the sense that we'll never truly know her, but we'll always feel her presence, a ghost of Hollywood's golden age, forever young, forever mysterious. By 1934, Jean Harlow had become MGM's most bankable star. Every movie she touched turned to gold, and audiences adored her. But what they didn't see was the toll the studio system was taking. She was rarely given time to rest. Film after film, Publicity tours, endless photo shoots, it was a cycle that left her drained. Friends noticed her health slipping, her famous platinum hair thinning, her once bright eyes dulled by fatigue. Yet MGM kept pushing. In those days, actors were property. Their exhaustion was simply part of the job. Off camera, Zhang was growing increasingly isolated. She loved the quiet life, preferring evenings at home to glamorous parties. But the image MGM had built for her of the sultry blonde who lit up the room meant she was constantly pressured to attend events she didn't enjoy. The disconnect between who she was and who she had to be deepened her loneliness. The 1932 death of her husband, Paul Byrne, cast a long shadow over her life. Publicly, she played the grieving widow, moving forward with grace. Privately, she struggled with guilt and unanswered questions. Jean Harlow's star burned bright and vanished too soon.